Welcome to Trouble with Truisms, where we challenge the business sayings that sound clever until you actually try to run a business with them. And then they become just a tad bit dangerous in most cases. Today's truism is one almost everyone's probably heard of. Build it and they will come. Before we dig into the actual truism itself, let's take a look at a little bit about where it actually comes from. That phrase actually comes from a pretty famous Kevin Costner movie called The Field of Dreams. And it wasn't about business, and the actual line really wasn't build it and they will come. It was build it and he will come. And it was about if this character that Kevin Costner played built a field in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, that a famous former baseball player who was dead, Shoeless Joe Jackson, would appear and play on this magical field, right? But the business community, for some reason, took that and morphed that into build it and they will come, and turned it into a bunch of different things about business, because the original statement wasn't about business or innovation or product or customer acquisition or adoption of new technologies. It was about this one character in the movie. And it was actually about faith, belief, and reconciliation as much as anything in the movie itself. But somewhere along the line, like I said, the business culture took it and turned it into something much bigger and broader. And now, today, in the business community, it means really build a product and the customers will show up and buy it, create a strategy and the people will follow it, roll out a new technology and the organization will use it. And this is where the trouble really starts, because building something only really proves one thing: that you can build it. It doesn't prove that the market wants it, or that the customers are willing to pay for it, or that your employees will actually use it. It doesn't prove people will change their behavior, or that the timing for the solution is right. And it doesn't prove that the problem is big enough to mean something really seriously to customers that they'll pay for it. And this is the part many leaders, founders, innovators, and executives get wrong. They confuse existence with traction, pull, and demand. Just because something exists doesn't mean there's a need and a demand for it. And just because it's useful doesn't even mean people will adopt it. The cost and the pain to use it might be seen as too much for the actual benefit delivers. And I think this is one of the most dangerous traps in business, because it comes from a good place. It comes from conviction, creativity, or optimism, right? It comes from belief that if we make something good enough, people will recognize the value. Now, sometimes that's true, but it's not automatically true. And the important thing is to remember the market doesn't reward effort, belief, or how much time you spent building something. As a matter of fact, the market really doesn't care about any of those things. The market rewards performance, relevance, and urgency. It basically rewards a solution for a problem that matters enough for someone to take action and spend money to make a difference with it, right? And there's a big difference between saying this is a good idea and saying this solves a painful enough problem that people will change their behavior of what they're doing and pay to do it. That second statement is where the real work begins, because customers already have habits. They have alternatives, budgets, and priorities. They already have ways of either solving, avoiding, tolerating, or ignoring the problem in many cases. So when you build something new, you aren't just asking people to admire it. You're asking people to make a commitment and to change. You're asking them to pay attention, spend money, and switch. What you're basically doing is asking them to trust you and stop doing something familiar and start doing something new and different. That's a much higher bar than most people realize. And the interesting thing is, this doesn't just apply to startups or entrepreneurs. It applies inside companies too. I'll give you some examples. A leadership team launches a new process, and many times they assume the people will just follow it. A transformation team rolls out a new tool and assumes the employees will just start using it. An innovation team builds a new solution and assumes the business will adopt it. And I've seen all of those. And those assumptions are really big and they cause many problems. Because internal customers are still customers. They're still people. Employees still have incentives. They still have constraints, competing priorities, habits, and reasons not to change. So when adoption doesn't happen, and trust me, I've seen it, leaders often blame the people. They say the employees are resistant, they just don't want to try, or that customers don't get it. They say the sales team didn't sell it hard enough, or that the organization is just slow to adopt. Maybe all that's true, but sometimes, and more often than you think, the harder truth is much simpler. It is that you built something before you understood why people would come and buy it. You solved a problem maybe that wasn't interesting, or was interesting but not urgent. You launched something, maybe it's useful, but it's not worth the cost that it takes to acquire it and deploy it. That's a real flaw in build it and they will come. It skips the hardest parts. It skips the customer and behavioral change. It skips creating an adoption system, testing the market, understanding what's really needed and wanted. It turns belief into strategy. And while belief is important, I'm not going to argue against it because you really need belief, especially when you're building something, because that's very difficult. And you need conviction to start. And you need courage to take a swing before everything is determined and found out to be true. But belief is a very poor substitute for evidence and proof. The better principle is not build it and they will come. The better principle is understand why they would come and buy before you build it. Or another way to say it, build from the evidence of demand and they will buy it. That doesn't mean you wait forever. That doesn't mean you research until you have certainty, because you never have full certainty. But you do need to understand the problem, the urgency, the customer, the challenges, the alternatives, and the behavior you're asking people to change too. Because in business, it isn't about can we build it. The question is, what makes someone care enough to want to buy it? And if you can't answer that clearly, building it is probably only going to make the mistake bigger and more expensive. So yes, experiment, create, build, take your shot. But do not confuse the act of building with demand, because the market isn't obligated to come and buy whatever you make just because you made it, right? And that is the trouble with this truism. So build to known demand. I hope you enjoyed this truism. Please tune in next week for our next truism. Thank you and have a great day.